Okay, so next up, what we will gonna do? We will solve the SSRS challenge. So let's first understand what is SSRF vulnerability. So an SSRF is a type of a security vulnerability that basically occurs when an attacker or a malicious user is able to manipulate the HTTP or any sort of request made by a particular vulnerable application in order to access the resources which are available on the server or other internal systems that the user or that attacker should not have access to. Correct. Meaning, if the application is generating any sort of request, now when I say any sort of request, that means that if the application is making or generating any sort of HTTP or DNS or SMTP or any sort of request, then if the attacker is able to manipulate that kind of request into accessing the server's internal resources, that means then there will be SSRF vulnerability. Now, this current application, the challenge number 11, is not at all demonstrating the entire SSRF workflow, like how the entire SSRF vulnerability is exploited. Instead, this challenge number 1 involves the step number 1 of SSRF. That means simply manipulating the HTTP request made by our vulnerable application into google.com. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So for that, what we have to do, we have to go back to our application. This is my application, and I'm gonna go back to my dashboard, and I will click on this contact mechanic page. Okay, now I will generate a service request. My problem description will always gonna be test. I mean, you can always use a different description. Now, as you can see, there is a mechanic API object which has this localhost as the URL parameter. So I'm going to forward this for the moment, and yes, I have successfully generated the service request. So what now? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply change this mechanic API to first, uh, I'm going to change it with a collaborator. Let's do that a real quick. So for that, I will have to change this and send the request. Is my application working properly? Could not connect to mechanic API. Okay, no problem. If that is the case, not at all an issue. But we have explicitly told by the application that we have to make a request for google.com. Let's try that. Google.com, and yes, we are indeed able to see the source code of google.com. This is what the google.com source code is exactly. It will look. Okay, so what yes, and I'm gonna run it. Yes, so as you can see, this is not entirely Google's source code, but yeah, it do replicate Google's search engine. Correct.